Okay, debugging Apex. What is debugging and when do we require debugging? See, if I have written an Apex code and when I try to execute the Apex, when I've written an Apex
Hello.
code.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Hello.
Pankaj. Hello, yes, Pankaj. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
1 minute. Okay. So as I said, when we have written Apex and we find that our Apex is not behaving as per our expectation, then we need to go and figure out the error in that. Okay, that's called debugging, figuring out where we have made the mistake. All right. So debugging is a simple concept. All that you have to do is, you just have to try and execute the code. Apex will help you in debugging because we have an option in Apex of looking into the debug logs. Debug logs means when you execute the code, whatever happens, everything is tracked in a debug log and you can see that. Okay, so you can actually open a debug log to view what all things happened. Let's say if there was a record which needed to be inserted, did that get inserted or not? If there was a variable, a value was to be assigned on that variable, did the variable value got assigned? So you can actually go and check each and every step in the debug log. Right? So Apex provides debugging support. You can debug your Apex code using developer console or debug logs. So there are two options. A debug log will record all the database operations, all the system processes like workflow, assignment, approval, validation rule, and the errors, which is the most important part, the error. Things which do not happen. Okay. So if you have written, let's say you have written an insert statement, insert A, and that insert does not happen. So if that does not happen, you will get to see that, okay, fine, there was an error there. Alright, so the error messages and so errors are tracked in the debug log. Database operations are tracked in the debug log and system processes are tracked in the debug log. Okay. Working with logs in the developer console. So in the developer console, you have an option of working with logs. Let me just show it to you. So there are two ways actually to check the debug logs. One is from the developer console. The other way is from your debug logs in the Salesforce user interface. In the user interface, you have an option of checking the debug logs.
Your screen has gone blank, sir.
Yeah, I'm just logging into Salesforce right now.
Okay.
Okay, so all that you can do is to track the debug logs, you can go to developer console. Okay, in developer console, if you execute anything from here, you will see the debug logs are tracked here. In developer
I can't
console,
see anything.
you can
Uh,
see the logs here. Okay, so if you actually execute anything, you will see the debug logs. You can also, if you have a piece of code and you just want to check that piece of code, if it's not in, stored anywhere, you can just go to open execute anonymous window, write that part of code here. While you execute, you can just click on open log and it will open the debug log for that particular thing. Right. That's it. counting equals counting equals insert a. If you have checked open log, it will execute and it will open the log for that. Okay, so there's an error or something. Now this is the log for it. See, there is this log for it. Double click on the log. Show me later. See, this is your execution log. So what all got executed, how it got executed and everything. Okay. So this is the debug log. New account, this name equals this. Okay. Got it. So this is where you will get to see the logs. All right. Now, how do we work with the debug logs? What is the best way to work with debug logs? Because if you see, in the debug log, you will not understand a lot of things, because a lot of things are written in a particular language format which we don't understand. So we don't have to understand each step of the debug log, right? We don't have to really work with the each step of debug log. All that we have to do is, when you are trying to execute a code and if it is not giving you the expected result, what you need to do is you just need to figure out a few checkpoints. See, there is no point actually reading everything that system does and the system tracks. That's not required for you. What is important for us? For us, it is important to track only the checkpoints. What is happening at this particular point? What is happening at this particular point? All right. So on those checkpoints, you can do system.debug. Okay. So the system.debug, and you can put anything to display here. Okay. Now what will this system.debug method do? It will actually display that message in the debug log, not in actual method, but in the debug log, it will display the message, right? So in that case, what we are trying to do, we are just trying to make sure that we are putting those, benchmarks in between, and we can just go and check those benchmarks. That okay, if I have got this message, which means that okay, so far the code was fine. Now go and check the next benchmark. That's how simple it is. Right? For example, system.debug display message. Okay. For example, if you have a code, let's say you have a block of code where there is a string, okay, called keyword, and then there is a set method. The set method supplies value to string. Then there is a query, and this query will basically, let's say, fetch data using keyword. Okay, and then there is a DML operation, update the data. Okay, let's say this is how it is. You want to have a string. The string will get its value from a set method. Then there is a query which will fetch the data based on the keyword. Then there's a DML operation. You want to update the data based on uh, whatever records have been fetched from the query. All right. So this is a four-step process which is happening. You start your method here. Okay. You start your method here, and this is where your output should be. Correct. Now, when you're trying to debug it, let's say you started here, but you're not finding the output to be this. Okay. Then what will you do? You execute the debug log. Debug log gives you a lot of information. All that you have to do is you have to use the system.debug method in between. Okay. So here, first stage is there is a set method which is responsible for getting the value for my what is this string keyword. Okay. So after this thing gets executed, you should write in your code system.debug, okay, keyword, so that when this is displayed in the debug log, you will understand whether the keyword has got some value or is it still null. Fine. Or has it got the value as you were expecting or not. So this will you'll understand. Okay. The same way, uh, query fetches value or not. So you try and display the system dot debug to display the query result, whatever is the name of the variable. Okay, one or two values from the query result, so that you understand whether. So now, if this one is working fine, which means so far my code is absolutely fine. Now, after that, if this query does not fetch result, means there is something wrong in the query, or there is no data for that particular keyword in the database, right? If so far keyword has been supplied properly, then either the query has been written in in the wrong format, or there is no data to be displayed. Correct. Life is simple after that. Then you can just go ahead and start focusing on this particular area rather than focusing on the entire code. After that, if this is also fine, you can do a system.debug to check end result, which again will be some variable. Now this will help you understand whether the data got updated or not. If you are not reaching output and if there is nothing wrong till here, if everything is fine till here, and if you're not getting output, then definitely there has to be some error in this particular part. So what is happening here? There's a DML which is happening here. So there has to be some problem with the DML. Update statement might not be working because of validation loop, because of a before trigger or before update trigger, something like that. Got it? This is how debug actually helps you. System.debug method. All right. So if you see, when you are on developer console, there is so much of information which gets tracked, but if you want, you can just open the debug only. Okay, this will only show you the debug statements, system.debug statements. So in this particular code I did not have, but then what will happen, you can quickly go and just click on debug only, and you can check the debug statements. So these things need to be checked. Okay, this one is where the problem lies. Got it? Now, so debugging is a simple concept. System.debug will allow you to check the values point to point and figure out where the error is. Okay. To make things even more simpler, as I told you that, For example, this one, I say if the query does not return any result, if I'm not getting result, the error can be of two ways. Either the query is not being executed properly or there is no value available for it. Alright. So sometimes what happens, even if you find the error, if you figure out that okay fine, this is where the code has not got executed properly, you need to catch what type of an exception has happened. Okay, so in Apex coding or in any type of programming, there will be exceptions a lot of times. The same code might work for one set of records, the same code will not work for another set of records. Why will that happen? Is it possible the same code works for 10 records and it doesn't work for other 10 records? That can happen, right? Why will that happen? Because there are different rules, different validations and all that stuff given, right? So sometimes, if the person supplies the correct value uh, and there is no problem in updating the records with that particular value, the code might get executed. At the same time, when you try the same code for a different set of records, it might not work, right? So that's basically about our simple debug. But now, how do we deal with those exceptions? If some exception is happening, then how do I track that? Okay. So Salesforce also, Apex also provides you an option of handling the exceptions. The next topic that we will talk is handling exception. Okay, how do we handle the exceptions in Apex? Handling exception is basically a little important because sometimes it's not just the exception that you want to catch, you also want to figure out what is the type of exception, just to make sure that okay fine, where your code is going wrong. So Apex uses exceptions to note errors and other events that disrupt the normal flow of the code execution. So the normal flow is disrupted by the errors and these errors can be handled as exceptions. Okay. So to handle the exception, we use a flow or a process which is called try catch finally. Okay, try catch finally statement. What is this try catch finally? Try catch finally is a combination of three statements. Okay, see, let's say your code is not giving you the expected result, the same debugging concept. You can see that the code is not giving expected result, all right, but you also need to figure out what type of error or what type of exception it is throwing. Is it because of some DML problem? Is it because of some other problem? Is it because the variable value has not been supplied properly, right? So finding out error, we can do it from system.debug normally. But at the same time, it's also important for us to figure out what type of error happened. Did that happen because of the DML restrictions? Did that happen due to some other reason? So try for catch actually helps you do that. So in this, the try stat, so as I said, it's basically a combination of three statements. Try, catch, finally. The try statement identifies a block of code in which an exception can occur. So when you know that, okay, fine, this is uh, the block where the exception is happening, where the error is coming, then what you will do? You'll write that block of code in the try statement. Under try statement, you will write that block of code. So Apex will try to execute that code. Catch statement identifies a block of code that can handle a particular type of exception. So in the catch statement, you will handle that exception basically. A single try statement can have 0 or more associated catch statements. Each catch statement must have a unique exception type. What type of exception you want to catch, that needs to be written in the catch statement. Okay. So the code in which exception can happen, that should be written in the try statement. Handling the exceptions should be written in the catch. And then there is one more finally statement. A finally statement identifies a block of code that is guaranteed to execute and allow you to clean up your code. So what is your finally statement gonna do? Finally statement will basically go ahead and clean up whatever you have done in the try statement. See, why are we writing this try catch finally? To figure out errors, right? So in this something which is not actual code, right? So in order to figure out error, if you have made any changes to the database, you would definitely want to restore it back to the previous stage where it was earlier, right? So that finally statement is that. So let's say just to catch the error, you have created one account. So in the finally statement, you should go ahead and delete that account which was created, so that your database comes back to the original stage. All right. Try catch finally. So this is called exception handling in Salesforce or in Apex. Syntax is pretty simple. Write try code block. So whatever code you want to try, catch. What do you want to catch? Exception type you have to define, and you have to give a name to the exception. And then you'll have to write the code. This code is to handle the exception. You can write another catch and write the code to handle it. And then you write a finally statement, and you can write the finally statement code. This is not required though, right? But in case you want to go ahead and clean up the data that you uh, did for try, you can do this here. All right. So reversing whatever you have done in try statement, because your ultimate objective was just to catch the exceptions. Now you
So
can
what do
actually
you mean by
revert it.
clean up the data in try statement?
Sorry.
I want to know what do you mean by clean up the data in try statement?
Clean up the data not in try statement, clean up the data in finally statement. Clean up the
That
mess
means
that you have done, clean up the mess that you have done in try.
okay.
Fine. So in
Means
try,
what you're doing. Okay.
one second. In try, you are trying to do something, and while you're trying, definitely you are actually making some changes in the database, something you are updating, some inserts you're doing. Finally is where you should use to clean up that part. That okay, fine. I tried to create a contact, before that I created an account, now I have to delete that.
Okay,
Got it?
got it.
Now, so we see when we are writing a catch statement, you are writing an exception type. Basically, a catch statement can catch an exception, and if you want the catch statement to catch a specific type of exception, that can also be done. Okay. So let's understand what are the different exception types that we have in Apex. First exception is DML exception. Okay, so DML exception is an exception type. Let's say you will write like this: try account A equals any account try insert A. Okay. Now you want to catch exception in case some exception is happening. Okay, try to do this. Now I know that this part is not happening, so I will try to catch DML exception. Is there a DML exception, or is there some other problem? So you can do DML exception handling. Okay, and in dealing with this catch block exception, what you can do, you can just go and debug the code here. System dot debug e dot get message. Get message will show you the message for that particular exception. Okay. Now, if it catches any DML exception, if it does not happen and it's because of a DML exception, it's a DML error, then that will be caught and that message will be displayed here. If it doesn't catch, then you can just go and write your finally statement in case you want to do something in the finally statement that can be written. Delete, okay, something like this. Okay, because I don't need this account. It was just created to test it. Okay. Apart from DML exception, if you want to catch some other type of exception also, you can write it here. If it's not DML exception, if it's a null pointer exception, so that you can catch here. So if there is a null pointer exception that takes place, you can system.debug this dot message. Got it? You can write something like this in your system.debug just to make sure that while you're trying to figure it out in the debug logs, you can easily search for this particular statement and find it out. Okay. So what are different types of exceptions that we deal with? One second. Okay. So talking about different exception types, what all exception types can we catch? DML exceptions. Any problem with a DML statement, such as an insert statement missing a required field on a record. So if the required field is missing or any other problem with the DML statement will be caught as a DML exception. List exception, any problem with a list such as attempting to access an index that is out of bounds. So if you are actually dealing with a list and you are trying to attempt an index number, let's say you are trying to attempt index number 5 and your list only has 4 values. So there is no index 5, right? So in that case, that will be a list exception. Okay, so you have supplied a list that has just 10 values. You are trying to attempt something for 15 times. It just got 10 values, so it will not find the index value number 11, 12. So for that reason, it will throw a list exception in that case. Null pointer exception is when so some variable which had to get had which had to have the value and you did not supply the value for it, you just kept it null. That's a null pointer exception. Query exception, any problem with SQL query if the query is not fetching the data, right? So such as assigning a query that returns no records or more than one record to a single one as object variable. So in case you are trying to do a query and your query is actually giving the problem, it is not retrieving any data, maybe because there is no result available, so that will be thrown as a query exception. If you are trying to fetch a value of a single s object variable but it is returning multiple values, then that's basically also query exception. Okay, and then comes the s object exception. So any exceptions on the S object are thrown as S object exceptions. Any problem with S object record, such as attempting to change a field in an update statement that can only be changed during insert, that's an S object uh, exception. All right. So any particular exceptions with the S object, if there is a duplicate record already available in that object, so these will be taken as S object exceptions. Got it? So these are one, two, three, four, five types of exceptions. All right. In case you feel, gradually you guys will have a good understanding that okay, fine, what type of error it might be having. If you're doing a DML statement thing, then only DML exception comes into picture. If you're dealing with a list, then only list exception comes. If there is a query, then only query exception should be in scope. So whatever is the possibility, you can actually write all those exception types. So you can write a catch statement for each exception type in your code. You're trying to debug. Okay. So if you feel there is a possibility of DML exception, try to catch the DML exception. You feel there is a possibility of query exception, you can write the query exception. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. So this is not quite clear to me. Actually, I have an understanding problem with this. Uh,
Hmm.
what we are doing it here is we are trying to catch the exceptions. But
Hmm.
when we write a code, it actually gives us the error messages and everything uh, on the top side of the code window. So why we are doing this all means are we trying to catch the exception in specific set of code or something? But in that case also it will throw us the exception at the top. So why we are doing it?
Okay. When you write the code, the error is displayed at the top.
Yeah.
Wow. Then you are very lucky if you get the errors in the top. Okay.
Okay.
The what error you get in the top, that's syntax error.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the error that we are talking about. If you are trying to get an output and you don't get the output. Syntax error तो anyhow you will not even be able to save the code. Forget about executing
Yeah.
and debugging and all those things. वो तो सेव
Okay.
ही नहीं होगा उसको execute कहाँ से करोगे? Fine.
Okay. So
So
code has been saved and we are not giving the getting the desired exception, and we need to find out what kind of exception it is.
right,
So by writing this code, it will give us the answer for that.
right. There too it's very simple. Syntax error is there. They it straight away shows you line number 17. You think for that you will be
Yeah,
requiring to do this? No. When the
that
code
is
is
what I.
saved, when your code is written, it's fine. No syntax error was. That's the reason why we are calling it exception. It's not even error. This
Okay.
is exception. Exception again, as I said just 5 minutes back. It might be working for one certain set of record, it's not working for other set of record. That's something which can happen with exception. Now it becomes
So
difficult for you to catch that exception, that what might be the reason. Definitely
okay.
you have not made a syntax error, what you have written is correct, but where exactly the problem is happening? Got it? Maybe the value that I'm assigning to the variable is not going through. Maybe the list is not having enough number of records. Maybe there is a null pointer somewhere. Maybe the query is not fetching data. Correct. If there is a problem with the query, the way you have written the query, then it will not even allow you to save it. So that's something which we are not bothered about. We are bothered about the code which has got saved, and when I try to execute, it does not execute. Got it?
Okay. So what if a certain part of code is working fine, and after that there is an exception? Then with the help of these all exception types, suppose I catch a DML exception. So in that part, if it has any DML exception, then
Hmm.
the system will debug it.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Fine. So we are just trying to catch, and it is again, try catch statement is to be written in a small part. You do not write a try catch for the entire code. So before try catch, as I was talking earlier, before try catch, you should try and do some certain system.debugs point to point checkpoints you should figure out. When you have figured out that this block of code has error, now do the try catch here. Or if you figured out this block has error, then try this block is not functioning properly, then do your try catch for this particular area. Correct?
Got it.
That will be, what do you
So
say?
if you could give us a very small practical example, like this is the error and how it is showing that. how it is debugging, it will be more clearer then.
Practically, for example, what is that practical example? When I am writing this, this is not practical example.
Yeah, this is totally a
Small
practical
practical
example.
example is what? This is only practical
What?
example. See, the problem is again, we are going back to the same stuff. Example, concept. Why are we not, focusing on concept?
Concept is now clear. I got what you meant to say. Yeah,
So see,
definitely.
these are concepts. These are not examples. These are concepts which you have to understand. And examples you have to do. There is, I have told you 100 times that there is some hard work you guys have to do. For everything, why are you so dependent? I'm just showing you the point. You are not understanding the concept. You are not actually ready to understand anything. So give us a small practical example. What is that? This is not practical.
Yeah, this is totally a
What is
practical
your
example.
practical example? You do one thing. You write an email to me. Define what is a practical example. I will tell you whether that practical example we can do or not.
Okay, I'll do that. No problem.
Seriously strange, man. We are struggling to understand concept. I see that you don't even understand difference between a syntax error and this one, and you're talking about practical example. अभी यहाँ पे I will just write one code and I will just go back and you will be very happy कि अरे वाह practical example हो गया. Concept में zero. Guys, these are advanced concepts. If you feel that okay fine, this is just like एक पेज बना दिया उसमें दो टेबल दिखा दिया, that part is done.
Okay,
Fine. तो ये वो सिंपल
got
चीज नहीं है कि you just need one small example. स्मॉल एग्जांपल का क्या करोगे? Small example will handle just one exception, DML exception. Then you want me to show 7 examples for different types of exceptions.
it. No, no, no. I was not
Very
expecting
very
you to.
strange. Try and focus on the concept. I mean, I seriously feel bad when people try to become so dependent. Concept with focus karo. Debugging is an important concept. There is no big challenge in debugging the code. Try and understand the concept. What type of exception can be thrown? How will we catch it? Okay.
Okay.
All right. So now, if you feel again, going back to when you have the block of code, you will be able to understand what type of exception can happen in that particular code block. So based on that, you can write multiple catch statements in one particular try, as I've done this, as I've done here. I'm trying to, if I feel that, okay, fine, there can be an error because of a DML, there can be an error because of a null pointer, there can be an error because of a query not fetching result, then I can write 3 catch statements. All right. Now, alternatively, what I can do is, if I don't want to write 3 catch statements, and I am not that much sure that what type of exception might have happened. See, we are defining the exception type, and then we are getting the message. Why do we do this? Because this makes things a little more easier. If you are kind of sure that okay, I am trying to attempt a DML operation, and the error might be because of the DML exception, then you can write this as catch DML exception, right? So then when this happens, you know that, okay, this is a DML exception for sure. And then you just try and start figuring out what is wrong and where it went wrong and all that stuff. Okay. Now, for other thing, alternatively, rather, we can also write this. If you want to write a catch statement for all types of exception, then you can write this exception E. Okay. All right. Now this exception E will catch when I just say exception and I do not define any exception type. then this will catch all types of exception. Okay, no matter DML or a null pointer or a query exception or a list exception, all the exceptions will be caught. So if you feel that there is a possibility where 3-4 types of exceptions can be there, then you should rather use simple exception E. Okay, and now if you try to do system.debug, you can display E dot exception type plus E dot get message. Something like this. Got it? So for generic exceptions where you're not very sure, then you can do it this way also. So that you are just writing one catch block and it's catching all types of exception. Okay, so this is not necessary if you are a little sure on what kind of an exception might be happening. All right, then you can straight away write the exception type. Got it? Do you understand debugging and exception handling? Try catch finally. Let me know if there is any difficulty or confusion understanding this. Any challenges? Anyone? Try catch. We have understood exception handling. Exception handling again, as I said, let me repeat, comes into picture only when you have figured out a small piece of code, right? So full system.debug log will happen. Then you try exception handling for a small piece of code. So you would rather put system.debug initially just to put the checkpoints and figure out um, till where your code is working as per your expectations. And if you figure out that okay, this might be the area where the problem is, then you can just go and write the try statement here. Try doing this, catch whatever exception type, and then whatever finally. So this is how you can actually be more clear on where the error is, what the error is, what kind of exception is being thrown. Got it? And then you can actually go ahead and deal with things. Clear? Let me know if there is any question or doubt. We are good? All right.
Yep.
So we'll meet